Hello my beautiful ladies and gentlemen, it's your fruitiness Mr. Jeremy Berry here, and welcome to another video. I enjoyed doing my last story a lot, so I figured, I'll tell another one here today. This is a story that actually happened last summer during my Scout Troops High Adventure. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I don't blame you. I used to be part of the Boy Scouts of America program, which is the case for a lot of boys who remembers the LDS Church, or the Mormon Church if you don't know what LDS means. I'm actually an Eagle Scout, believe it or not. I didn't come here to say that, but, I thought it was worth mentioning. Anyway, I'm sure you're wondering what high adventure is, but before I explain that, I'm going to explain something else to you just to help you understand the LDS church language that I'm going to be speaking in. Basically, in our church, when a young man hits 12 years old, he gets what we call the Aaronic priesthood and gets put into the Deacons quorum. When this young man hits 14 years old, he gets put into the teacher's quorum, and when he turns 16, he gets put into the priest's quorum. Then when you turn 18, you get put into the elder's quorum when you're ready. That's all I'm going to say about that, and just seek out the LDS missionaries if you want to learn more, or even talk to someone else that you know it's LDS. Anyway, enough of that. On to the next part. And so basically when you're a deacon, you usually go in what we call a scout camp, which is a week-long camp out at a certain campground where a lot of what you do is towards gaining merit badges. Now, teachers and priests go on something similar, but it's just the high adventure is more of a week-long excursion where you try to accomplish a goal, like performing a cattle drive or rafting down a river. And it's a lot more fun in my opinion, just because you're on like a actual trip rather than just sitting at a campground getting merit badges and going to merit badge classes all day. That just gets old real quick. Anyway, the story takes place last summer, like I said, and this is during my last high adventure as a Boy Scout, where we went on a rafting trip down the Colorado River. Now we had to go with a professional rafting company, so we did have to share the trip with some other troops, but it didn't really matter all that much because we didn't interact with them too much unless we were on the water and they started spraying us with water guns, or we were doing meal times or whatnot. However, there was one troop that all the other troops, including mine, hated. None of us liked them. And you might be wondering why. It's because it was a group of deacons. You know how I said they were the 12 and 13 year olds? High adventure is a camp out for the teachers and priests, the 14 to 18 year olds, right? And all of a sudden you get this group of deacons just thrown right there, and it's like, okay, now we have a group of younger kids here. And not all deacons are bad, but because they're 12, 13 years old, they can be pretty immature. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that 14 to 18 year olds are saints, but we've definitely gotten a bit more mature than deacons are. Also, we weren't sure why the deacons leaders had gotten them in on a trip that a bunch of older kids were going to go on, but I guess they got what they were asking for? Or something? I don't know. Now, here's a quick rundown of what the deacons would do. Alright? The most annoying thing is whenever we would eat food, the river guides would cook it for us, which is way different from other high adventures, by the way. Typically you cook your own food, which I preferred, because you're actually the one preparing it. You can, see where the stages are. You can go talk to your friends and whatnot, but the guys just kind of wanted you to stay away from them so they could cook the food, and it's like, I'm sitting here starving and I'm just waiting for these guys to finish. But it wasn't that bad. But whenever the food was ready, they would have the leaders, or the adults, go first. However, the deacons didn't play by their rules all the time. I can think of at least 3 occasions where the deacons cut in front of some of the leaders because they wanted to get food before us, I guess. I don't know. They were never the first ones there at the meal times, but they always seemed to leave first. I don't know how that worked out. But whatever. There was even one time when one of them was questioned as to how they got in front of the leaders, and all he did was say, I don't know, and he went back to making his food. So it was like everyone didn't like these kids. Not to mention, they were rowdy as crap. They would not shut up. Which, honestly, with kids that age, I'm not really expecting them to, be quiet all the time. But my gosh. Also, they would taunt us all the time on the water because they didn't think that we were gonna do anything to them. Oh, if only they knew. Now you might be thinking, why didn't you just kick them to the back of the line? We did multiple times, but they just kept doing it. Even when their leaders told them to stop, sometimes they would still do it. And it just got really, really frustrating eventually. Now, not all the kids were unbearable. There was one, I remember, whose name was Miles, and he was actually a pretty cool kid. But there was one kid that was the worst of them all. Everyone knew this kid. I don't remember his actual name, but he wore a red, white, and blue American flag swimsuit. Almost every day we were there. Like 3 of the 4 days we were there, he wore this swimsuit. So appropriately, we named him Captain America. And I think he was either the one that started the whole cutting in line thing, or he was the one that like everyone noticed doing it first. And he just had no sense of respect at all, and it kind of caused a chain reaction to have the other kids in that troop not show that same respect. But yeah, we got tired of this kid, to say the least. Okay, so let's get to the actual meat of this tale right now. So this fateful story takes place on the final day of rafting. Now, my troop, as well as the other troops, got 2 rafts. And I was on one of them with my older brother, who came as a leader because he wanted to. My dad, a family of like 4 to 5 people who came on the trip as well. It's a story for a whole other day. Those were interesting people, seriously. And my friends Landon, Caleb, and Caden were on the raft as well. Actually, I think we had 2 more leaders with us, but they weren't really going to do anything. Now, we've been plotting, our whole troop, and I think other troops have been plotting for some time about how we were going to dunk these deacons in the water, and more specifically, Captain America. Now, the opportunity presented itself just before lunchtime. Now, we just gotten off a rapid in the river, and we noticed the Deacons' raft was right behind us, because they were the only troop that only got 1 raft. Now, most of the boys in my troop were on our other raft, and they were far ahead of us, so they weren't going to help us at all. And so it was basically going to be me, Caleb, Landon, Caden, and my older brother that were going to do anything to swamp this group of like 12 Deacons or so. So we flipped our boat around and headed best we could upriver to close the gap between us and the Deacons' raft. Now, these kids knew we were coming. I mean, we're rowing straight for them. And so it's not really like, a very covert way of reaching a boat, now is it? And one of their leaders, I think he was the older brother to one of the younger kids, he was a husky rugby player, and he was their front line. Like, he could easily, with all of those Deacons, make a defense against our 5 people that are going to try to invade their boat. And so we were like, crap. We have to get this guy out of the boat if we want to stand a chance. And so by the time we got to their boat, we basically just like got nose to nose with them. My brother was like standing there. My brother's not a very big guy. He's smaller than me. I weigh 180 pounds and I'm 6 foot. But my brother weighs like 170, I think, and he's 5'7". I mean, this rugby player was way bigger than my brother was. And they just kind of had a stare down. They just kind of stood there and just stared at each other. And my brother just kind of eventually just kamikazed himself. He just launched himself at this dude and tried dragging him into the water. My friend Caden, in the meanwhile, decided to just jump off our boat into theirs. However, this was during the whole wall thing, so he got met by like 6 Deacons or so at the side of the boat, so he went toppling into the water. And so that wasn't really going to help us. And as my brother kamikazed onto the leader, I tried to do the exact same thing as Caden because I thought they were distracted, but the same thing ended up happening to me. So we had 2 people try stupidly to jump from our boat to theirs, and we both got dunked. So that was fun. But this is when the story gets really interesting. Now, these next details were told to me by my dad, because obviously I'm in the water. I can't really see anything. And my dad was like, trying to get Caden up out of the water, and he was watching the whole thing. And so my brother, he kamikazed himself to get the leader out. He was hanging for dear life from the side of the raft, holding onto this guy's life vest, and he's slipping. I mean, half his body's in the water. He's not exactly in a good position here. And so while this is happening, Landon, who you've seen in videos before, he's sitting there, and as my brother's struggling, he just kind of jumps from our boat onto theirs and just lands on the leader's back. That's when they all just kind of slid into the water. I also didn't know this till after, but apparently Caleb told me that he dunked one of the Deacons while he was sitting on our raft. I don't really know if that's true, but it's Caleb. I'll trust him. So he helped a little bit by dunking one of them. He didn't really do much either. And also, in case if you're wondering, Caden didn't end up doing anything really either. He just sat in the water, trying to get back up into the boat, and by the time he did, it was already over. Now, with the leader out of the boat, who was the only one I was honestly worried about at all, I went back to where the two noses were touching on the rafts, and I grabbed the ropes on the other side, and I pulled myself up back into our boat, and so I just jumped from there onto the Deacons boat. Wasn't really met by anything that time. And as I did that, there was this little kid in a neon green shirt who, I mean, props to this kid. He was fighting like a dog to get me out of this raft. I mean, he was pushing me from the back, and I'm not really on balance, and so I'm kind of, just stumbling a little bit. And eventually, I just turn around, grab the kid by his life jacket, and I throw him over the side of the boat. And as I did that, I turned around, and there's just kids all inside this boat. So I'm throwing kids just into the water. Some of them are like on the side, and I'm just grabbing them by their legs and flipping them over. Oh, it was a fun time. And then all of a sudden, that kid in the neon green shirt climbed back into the boat and started pushing me again. So all I did is I grabbed him by his shirt, and I threw him back into the water just backwards, and he was like, oh, boom. And yeah, so I basically cleared this boat of any Deacons, except for there were about 4 still in the back just huddling in fear. Now, the river guide that they had, he was the most experienced one on the trip, and he was a big dude. I mean, it would have worried me if he actually wanted to retaliate. He was way bigger than I was, but he just sat there enjoying the show. I'm pretty sure he was just as tired of these Deacons as we were, and so as long as we didn't try to get him in the water, he was perfectly fine with what was happening, because he was just like, all right, they're doing something I've wanted to do this whole trip. So I had no intentions of even touching him, but little old Captain America is huddling in that little group of 4 Deacons in the back of the boat, and so I walk over to him, and he stands up. He stood up in the boat, and that's a bad idea, because if he's sitting down, it's hard for me to like get him up, because he can hold on to stuff. His friends can actually like grab onto his life jacket and hold him there. But he stood up, and he said to me, "I'm not playing." All right, I'll admit, part of me hesitated, because I kind of flashed back on sometimes when I was a little kid, when someone was like doing something that I didn't want them to do, and I would be like, I'm not playing, or please leave me alone, and it was, I kind of like hesitated, because I was like, oh man, I feel this kid's pain. But my older brother was over the side of the boat, and he was yelling at me, throw him in, don't you dare let him go. That snapped me back to my senses real quick. I was like, wait, the whole point of me throwing all of these Deacons into the water was to get this kid into the dang water. So I grabbed him by his life jacket, lifted him up. He wasn't that heavy. I mean, he probably weighed like 100 pounds tops. And I just carried him over to the side of the boat and threw him in. It was so gratifying to finally dunk this kid. Admittedly, I made a mistake here. My brother was on the right side of the boat. I carried the kid to the left side of the boat. I should have thrown him at my brother. I realized that afterward, and I was like, oh man, that would have been better if I'd have thrown him at my brother. Because my brother could have, not really like, probably would have done too much to him, but he would have like, kind of harassed him a little bit in the water, which is honestly what this kid deserved. But man, it was so gratifying getting this kid in the water finally. And I just kind of left the other kids there, because I came here for Captain America. I got Captain America. The other kids, they're just innocent bystanders. I'm going to leave them alone. Now, when lunchtime rolled around, the other troops who saw the whole thing came up and congratulated us on our accomplishment. I remember one troop who said they wanted us, and more specifically me, to help them do it later that day. Again, they were going to do it again. I was tired. I mean, I'd just gone through all of that, and so I was tired, and I'm like, nah, dude, it's cool. I mean, I'm not going to harass them anymore. If you guys want to do it, go for it, but I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to, like, target these kids and just, like, make them have a terrible, terrible time here. I did it once, but if you want to do it again, like I said, go for it. But that was probably one of the sweetest moments of any high adventure I'd ever been on up to that point. Man, if you guys enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and comment down below some things that you would like to do in the future, and I'll try to get to them. But again, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the future for more videos. Farewell, everybody.